The network is a realm. And let's be honest, like any realm worth its salt, it is constantly under threat. It must be defended.
That is quite the dramatic opening, but, well, you are absolutely right. In fact, I would argue the stakes are actually higher than your typical medieval kingdom
Yeah.
because the treasury we are protecting, our data, is functionally infinite, and the walls we are trying to guard are entirely invisible.
Right. I am definitely going for a maximum cinematic flair right off the bat today because we aren't just talking about, wires and fiber optics and blinking lights and some freezing cold server room. We are talking about a kingdom under constant siege. Every single device, every server, every cloud system, if you think of them as villages, castles, and strongholds, it makes this whole thing come alive. And the threats, the hackers, the malware, the script kiddies, they are the wildlings at the gates. They are just out there testing every lock, looking for a loose brick in the wall, waiting for the guards to fall asleep.
It really is a fitting analogy. In our source material for this deep dive, specifically looking at network security, we are dealing with exactly that. And while the textbooks talk about protocols, packets, and the OSI model, what we're really discussing here is the basic infrastructure of survival. How do we keep the bad actors out while still letting the good guys do their actual work? Because if you lock the castle down too tightly, the merchants cannot trade, the kingdom starves.
Exactly. That balance is exactly what we're here to figure out today. So, welcome to the deep dive. I am going to be playing the role of the bard today, basically the chronicler trying to translate this dry technical text into a bit of an epic legend for you. And you, my friend, are the chief strategist.
I will gladly accept that title. My role is to provide the actual battle wisdom. We have an extensive stack of sources here to get through. My job is to make sure we do not get so completely lost in the dragon stories that we lose sight of the practical knowledge. We need to nail down the technical precision for you. We need to understand exactly how the bricks are laid, not just what the castle looks like from a mile away.
Deal. Our mission today is to master this entire domain of network security. We are going to build this kingdom from the ground up, look at the walls, check the guards, and even look at the magic floating up in the sky, which is the cloud. So, strategist, where do we lay the very first stone?
We have to begin with the lay of the land, the network architecture itself. Before you can even think about defending a kingdom, you absolutely have to understand its geography. You need to know where the rivers run and where the roads end.
Right. So, in the absolute simplest terms, what actually is this realm? What defines a network?
At its core, a network is about three fundamental things: connection, communication, and transmission. It's just the underlying infrastructure that allows devices to talk to one another. But we have to look closely at the scale. Not all territories in the realm are exactly the same size or have the same rules. We basically have the LAN and the WAN.
Okay, let me try the analogy here. The LAN, or local area network, that is the castle and its immediate surrounding village, right?
Precisely. A LAN covers a limited geographic area. That could be a home, a single office building, or a specific data center. The defining characteristic here is ownership and speed. The Lord of the Keep, which in this case is the organization or the homeowner, actually owns the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
You lay the physical cables, you buy the switches, you completely control the airways if it is Wi-Fi. It is high speed, it has low latency, and most importantly, it is entirely yours.
Okay, so it's safe, secure, completely behind our own walls. Now, the WAN, the wide area network, that feels a lot more like the King's Road.
That is a perfect comparison, but let us deepen that a bit. A WAN is what connects distant lands together. It connects your castle in the north to another castle way down in the south. But here's the major catch. You do not own the road. The WAN is managed by third-party providers, your internet service providers. You are traversing territory that is not inherently under your control.
Oh, right. So if I'm sending a messenger from my castle to yours, the second he leaves my drawbridge, the edge of my LAN, he is out on the WAN.
And because he is out on the King's Road, he is highly vulnerable. He could be intercepted by bandits. Or, the road might be closed for repairs, which in our world translates to latency or network downtime. You have essentially no control over those road conditions. You're only paying a toll to use it. This is exactly why we desperately need encryption when we leave the castle, which we will definitely get to later. But first, we need to understand the infrastructure inside our own walls. The nuts and bolts, or the bricks and mortar to keep the theme going. Exactly right. How do we manage the traffic flowing within the castle versus the traffic that is trying to leave the castle? This is where people constantly get tripped up when they are studying this material. We need to clearly distinguish between two absolutely critical pieces of hardware, the switch and the router.
Yeah, I always get these two mixed up. Let's stick to the characters to wrap our heads around this. To me, the Switch feels a lot like the city guard.
Go on. Why does the Switch feel like the city guard?
Well, the guard is stationed inside the walls. He knows literally everyone who lives there. If I walk up and give him a sealed letter for the blacksmith, he doesn't just stand there and shout it out to the whole town square, right? He walks it straight over to the blacksmith's specific shop.
That is actually a spot-on analogy.
Ah.
A switch connects devices within a network, within the LAN itself. It operates at layer 2 of the OSI model, which is the data link layer. And it is highly intelligent. It uses something called a MAC-C address.
The MNAC address, that is the physical address, right? Sort of like a permanent tattoo on the device.
Yes, the media access control address. It is hard-coded right into the network interface card at the factory where it was built, is a completely unique identifier. The switch learns these physical addresses.
Wait, how does it actually learn them? Does it have a registry book or something?
This is a great detail to dive into. It uses a protocol called ARP, the Address Resolution Protocol. Imagine the switch is brand new. It was just unpacked. It knows absolutely nothing. You plug in your laptop and you try to send a file over to the network printer. The switch doesn't know where the printer is yet. So your laptop essentially shouts out, hey, who has the IP address of the printer?
Literally like shouting in the middle of the town square.
Exactly that. We call that a broadcast. Everyone hears it. But only the printer hears it and shouts back, I do. And here's my specific MAC address. The switch hears this reply and immediately writes it down in a secure ledger called the CAM table. It notes down printer is on port 3 and laptop is on port 1. Now, the next time you want to print, it doesn't need to shout at all. It just quietly walks the message right over to port 3.
So ARP is basically the translator between the logical who are you and the physical where are you.
Ideal way to put it. Without ARP, the switch is effectively deaf and blind. And this exact efficiency is why switches totally replaced the old hubs we used to use.
Hubs? What were those?
Hubs were essentially the town crier. They had no memory and no ledger. They just shouted every single message to everyone on the network. Hey, here is a highly confidential bank transfer for the Lord. And literally everyone plugged into the hub hears it. It was noisy, incredibly slow, and wildly insecure from a packet sniffing perspective. Switches provide that direct, point-to-point secure delivery within the castle walls.
Okay, so the switch handles all the local traffic. But what if the message actually needs to leave the castle? What if I need to send a secure message all the way to King's Landing?
Then the city guard or switch cannot help you at all. He does not know the way to King's Landing. He only knows the local shops inside the walls. He needs to hand the message off to the router. The router is your border checkpoint.
Got it. So the router connects different networks entirely.
Correct. The router operates up at layer 3, the network layer. It connects your LAN to the WAN, or connects one LAN to another entirely different LAN. And because it specifically deals with the chaotic outside world, it does not use AM addresses for navigation. It uses IP addresses.
The logical address.
Yes. If the MAC address is a physical fingerprint on your actual hand, the IP address is your mailing address. It tells the router roughly where in the world this packet needs to travel. The router maintains a routing table, which is essentially a giant map of the known world, and it constantly calculates the absolute best, fastest path for that traffic to take.
So just to do a quick recap for you listening, switch equals MIC address equals inside the castle. Router equals IP address equals the border crossing.
You have got it perfectly.
Yeah.
But we cannot just have open borders where anyone can walk through. The router might know the way, but it does not necessarily stop enemies from simply using the road and walking right in. We need actual protection. We need a heavy gate that can slam shut the second the wildlings approach.
Ah, the firewall, the mighty castle gate.
The firewall is the absolute cornerstone of network defense. It strictly controls access between networks, typically sitting right between your highly trusted LAN and the completely untrusted internet. But not all gates are built with the same level of security. And this is exactly where the source material gets highly technical.
Yeah, I was reading that there are different generations of firewalls. It's kind of like the difference between a lazy guard who just briefly glances at your badge and an elite guard who actually remembers you from yesterday.
That is a remarkably accurate way to put it. The most basic type of firewall is called packet filtering. This is the lazy guard who just checks your travel papers against a static list, what we call the access control list, or ACL.
How does that actually look in practice?
The guard basically holds a clipboard. The list says, allow anyone coming from Village A, and block absolutely anyone from Village B. When a packet arrives at the gate, he looks at the source IP address. Does it match Village A? Yes. Okay, go on in.
Mm-hmm.
He does not look inside the wagon. He does not care what you are carrying. He does not even care you've been here before. He just blindly checks the header against his list.
That sounds simple and fast, but maybe a bit too easily fooled. Like if I just fake my ID badge, if I spoof my IP address, I can just walk right in.
Exactly the problem. It is completely stateless. The guard has zero memory of past events. That brings us to stateful inspection. This is the modern baseline standard for firewalls today.
So this is the guard with a memory.
Yes. Stateful inspection actually tracks the context of the entire conversation.
Yeah.
To really understand this, you have to understand the TCP handshake.
Oh, the secret handshake. I love this part.
Computers are incredibly polite. Before they ever exchange actual data, they introduce themselves. It is a strict three-step process. Step 1. The client sends a SYN packet. That stands for synchronize. Hello, I want to synchronize a connection with you. Step 2. The server replies with a SYN ACK packet. I acknowledge your request and let's synchronize. Step 3. The client sends a final ACK packet. Acknowledged, we are now talking. Once that exact sequence happens, a valid session is established. The GuardR stateful firewall watches his entire handshake happen.
So what happens if a packet just randomly shows up out of nowhere at the gate?
Exactly. If a sneaky packet arrives at the gate claiming, hey, I'm just part of the conversation we're already having, let me in, the stateful firewall checks its internal memory. It looks at its state table and says, wait a minute, I never saw a three-way handshake for you. You are lying.
Yeah.
And it immediately drops the packet. It blocks unsolicited traffic purely based on context.
That is so much smarter. It totally prevents someone from sneaking in by just pretending to be a returning merchant.
Correct. And then, going even further, there is the proxy firewall.
Mm.
This one is fundamentally different. It acts as a complete middleman.
Like sending a scout out to do your trading for you so no one in the market knows the king is actually the one buying the wine?
Precisely. A proxy firewall stands directly between the internal user and the dangerous outside world. If you want to access a website, you do not talk to the website. You tell the proxy. The proxy goes out onto the internet, gets the website, completely checks it for poison or malware, and then brings it back to you. The website never actually sees you. It only sees the proxy's IP address. The proxy completely breaks the network connection, deeply inspects the content, and then manually rebuilds it. It is slower, yes, but vastly more secure.
Now, speaking of trading with the outside world, we have a very special area in our network architecture because sometimes we absolutely need to let outsiders access certain things like our public web server or our email server, but we definitely don't want them wandering freely through the bedrooms of the castle.
We need a secure buffer zone,
The DMZ, the demilitarized zone.
or, as it is often called in modern terminology, the screened subnet. Think of this as the outer courtyard of the castle. It is walled off from the wild outside world, but crucially, it is also completely walled off from the inner keep.
So our public-facing web server lives in this courtyard. The wildlings, or just regular customers, can come into the courtyard to look at the website.
Yes, but heaven forbid if they manage to burn down that web server. If they find a vulnerability and completely compromise it, they are still physically trapped inside that courtyard. There's another firewall, a much higher, thicker wall, sitting between the DMZ and the internal network, the keep. The drawbridge to the internal keep is permanently raised to them. They cannot pivot and get to the sensitive database or the internal treasury.
That is brilliant design. It is all about containing the breach if the worst happens.
Exactly. This is a foundational form of segmentation. And segmentation is arguably one of the most critical concepts for you to grasp, both for mastering this material and for real-world security architecture. You absolutely do not want what we call a flat network.
A flat network that sounds like a castle with literally no internal doors, just one giant room.
Worse, it is a castle where everyone, the cooks, the guards, the king, the peasants, all live in one massive undivided hall. If an attacker manages to breach the main gate, they instantly have access to absolutely everything. The king, the gold, the armory, it is all just sitting right there. We want moats. We want walled districts inside the city.
And in networking, we call those moats VLANs, virtual LANs.
Right. We can logically separate the accounting department from the engineering department, even if they're sitting in the exact same building and physically plugged into the exact same switches. If the engineering network gets infected with some nasty malware because a developer downloaded something risky, the VLAN segmentation acts as an invisible moat that totally prevents it from spreading over to accounting. It strictly limits the blast radius of a cyber attack.
Digging moats to save the gold. I really like it. But strategists, even with all these moats and walls, if the enemy is determined enough, they're going to find a way.
And that is why we need much more than just static architecture. We need active defense. We need an overarching strategy.
Which brings us perfectly to part two, the defenses of the wall.
Indeed. The foundational philosophy here, the absolute core of modern security, is what we call defense in depth.
Okay, let's unpack this for a minute. Why isn't one giant 700-foot ice wall enough? Why not just buy the absolute most expensive next-generation firewall on the market and call it a day?
Because eventually, walls crumble. Guards fall asleep on duty. Software has zero-day bugs. Administrators make simple configuration errors. If you rely entirely on a single security control, you have built a single point of failure. Defense in depth is entirely about layering your defenses. You have a deep moat, then a high wall. Then you put archers on top of that wall, then a heavy locked gate, then an armed guard standing inside the gate, then a locked reinforced door leading to the inner keep.
Yeah.
And inside that keep, the actual treasure is locked inside a safe.
So if the firewall somehow misses the malicious packet, the endpoint antivirus catches it. If the antivirus misses it, the strict user permissions stop it from executing.
Exactly. It is all about exponentially increasing the work factor.
Work factor. That sounds like a physics equation.
It essentially is. It measures the sheer effort, time, and computing resources required for a dedicated attacker to successfully bypass all of your controls. We want to make that work factor so incredibly high that the attacker either just gives up and moves on to a softer target, or, and this is more likely, they are forced to make so much noise trying to break through all those layers that we easily detect them.
Speaking of detection, we have two main types of eyes looking out from the wall, the IDS and the IPS. And honestly, these acronyms trip people up all the time because they sound so identical.
They're very closely related, but their actual jobs in the battle are fundamentally different. Think of the IDS, the intrusion detection system, as the watchers on the wall. Their entire job is just looking for trouble. They constantly scan the network traffic looking for known signatures of attacks or for strange, anomalous behavior.
But they don't actually fight the attackers.
No, they do not. An IDS is strictly passive. It sits what we call out of band. It is only watching a copy of the network traffic, not the actual live flow. When they see a wildling approaching, they blow the warning horn. They send a massive red alert to the security operations team. Alert: SQL injection detected attempting to hit port 80. But, and this is crucial, the malicious packet still reaches its destination. The attack actually happens. You just happen to know about it.
Okay, that makes sense. So the IPS, the intrusion prevention system, those are the elite warriors.
Correct. The IPS sits directly in line with the traffic. It is physically part of the road. If it sees an attack coming, it does not just yell about it. It draws its sword and shoots. It instantly drops the packet, forcibly resets the TCP connection, or immediately blocks the attacking IP address. It actively prevents the intrusion from completing.
Okay, wait. So if the IPS is so much better, why would anyone ever use just an IDS? Why not always shoot the bad guys?
That is a grand strategic question, and it comes up constantly in real-world architecture, because sometimes the elite warriors shoot the wrong person. We call that a false positive. Imagine your aggressive IPS decides to block your CEO's completely legitimate financial upload because the data packet looks slightly weird. Now the entire business stops functioning. Money is lost. Sometimes you just want to passively watch and learn your environment with an IDS before you start aggressively blocking things with an IPS.
Ah, got it. So IDS detects and alerts. IPS detects and blocks. You definitely want to keep that straight.
Memorize that exact distinction. Now let's pivot and talk about the concept of trust. In the old days of network security, we used to basically assume that if you were physically inside the castle walls, if you were plugged into the corporate LAN, you were inherently a good guy.
Right, the mentality of he's wearing the king's colors, obviously we should let him into the treasury.
Exactly. We jokingly called it the hard, crunchy, outside, soft, chewy center security model. And that led to absolute disaster. Insider threats, compromised employee credentials. Once a sophisticated attacker managed to get past that outer firewall, they had completely free reign. If a foreign spy put on a local guard's uniform, he could go literally anywhere he wanted.
So we had to radically change the philosophy. Today, the standard is a model called zero trust.
Yes. Trust no one.
It sounds kind of bleak when you say it like that. Zero trust. Is it really that paranoid of a system?
It is not paranoia. It is just reality. It effectively means never trust, always verify. Just because a user is securely connected to the corporate LAN does not mean they automatically get access to the sensitive database. Just because they're holding a physical badge does not mean they get to open every door. We continuously check their identity, we check the security health of their specific laptop, and we check the context for every single request they make.
So even if I am literally the king, I have to stop and show my ID at the door every time I want to enter my own bedroom.
Every single time you turn the handle. And if your crown looks even a little bit crooked, or you are trying to enter the bedroom at 3 a.m. from a weird location, we might aggressively ask for a second form of ID. That is the essence of multi-factor authentication.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of annoying friction for the user, honestly.
It definitely can be friction, yes. But the alternative is total system compromise. And deeply connected to that idea is the concept of the keymaster. Because not everyone needs the key to everything in the realm.
The principle of least privilege.
This is absolutely crucial for you to understand. A user, or even an automated software program, should only ever have the absolute minimum permissions necessary to do their specific job. The local baker does not need the master key to the armory. The summer marketing intern does not need administrative access to the central payroll server.
Because if that marketing intern gets hacked...
Exactly. If they are operating with least privilege, the hacker only gains access to the cafeteria lunch menu and maybe some draft press releases. If they mistakenly have admin access, the hacker instantly owns the entire kingdom. Least privilege strictly limits the damage. It firmly contains the fire to one single room.
It makes total sense when you lay it out like that. Now, in any good battle or any good kingdom, you need someone diligently writing down exactly what happened. The scribes.
Logging and monitoring. We absolutely need to record every ingress, every egress, every single failed login attempt, every file change. We use powerful centralized tools called SINS, Security Information and Event Management Systems, to aggregate all of these thousands of logs.
Yeah.
It is exactly like having a master of whispers who sits in a dark room and listens to tiny reports from every corner of the kingdom looking for hidden patterns.
So he's looking for things like, "My lord, the gate at the north wall has been tried with the wrong key exactly 500 times in the last 60 seconds.
Exactly. That is a security incident. Without centralized logs, you are completely blind. You would not even know you were actively being attacked until the castle was already burning down around you.
And finally, strategists, let's quickly talk about the absolute worst-case scenario. What if the defenses actually fail? What if a dragon just swoops down and burns the whole data center to the ground? Or, I guess more realistically, what if the power grid goes down?
This touches on the A in our fundamental CIA triad, availability. Because security is not just about keeping secrets hidden, it is equally about making sure the system actually works when authorized people need it. We desperately need redundancy.
Like having a whole backup castle.
Or at the very least, having backup walls and backup food supplies. High availability means we systematically eliminate all single points of failure. We use RAID arrays for hard drives. If one physical disk completely shatters, the data is still perfectly intact and running on the others. We use clustering for our critical servers. If server A completely crashes, server B takes over the load instantly without the user even noticing. We have massive backup diesel power generators. We want the kingdom to remain standing even if an entire individual castle falls.
Because in the modern world, downtime directly costs money.
Millions of dollars. Just think about Amazon on Prime Day. If their core network goes down for even 1 hour, they aren't hacked in the traditional sense of stolen data, but they have undeniably suffered a massive security failure. They have lost a fortune. Availability is security.
Wow. Okay, this is starting to feel like a very secure setup. We have walls, guards, spies, backup generators, moats. But the reality is not everything we care about is actually inside our own castle anymore. A vast majority of us are moving our stuff up to the sky.
Yes. The kingdom in the clouds. This brings us to part 3.
Cloud computing. It sounds so mystical and magical, but as the source material bluntly reminds us, the cloud is really just someone else's computer.
That is the highly cynical but completely accurate definition. Cloud computing is fundamentally about providing on-demand access to a massive shared pool of configurable computing resources. But from a pure security perspective, it changes the rules of the game entirely. You are no longer defending your own physical perimeter.
Right, you're basically defending a rental property.
Exactly. And for this material, you absolutely must understand the 3 main cloud service models. If you think of them as varying rental agreements for your castle, it makes perfect sense.
Okay, let's run through the analogies. First up, IaaS infrastructure as a service.
IA is exactly like renting a vacant plot of land. The cloud provider, let's say Amazon Web Services or Microsoft, is the landlord. They give you the plot of dirt, they pave the roads, which is the networking, and they hook up the electricity, which is the power and virtualization layer. They ensure the ground doesn't literally slide away into the ocean, and they make sure the outer perimeter fence is up.
But the actual castle itself.
That is entirely on you. You have to bring all the bricks, you have to install the operating system yourself, you install the middleware, you build the applications, and you manage all the data. You have the absolute most control in this model, but you also have the most manual work. You're the master builder.
And real-world examples of that.
Amazon EC2 instances or Microsoft Azure virtual machines, you're fully managing the servers, you just don't own the physical metal they run on.
Okay, that makes sense. Next up, PaaS Platform as a Service.
This one is like renting a completely pre-built castle structure. The provider manages all the underlying hardware, but they also manage the operating system, they fix the physical roof, they patch the Windows server when there's a vulnerability, they update the database foundations.
Oh, nice. So I don't have to worry about applying tedious Windows updates at 2 a.m.
Correct. You just focus purely on deploying your custom applications. This model is primarily for the developers, the wizards of the realm. They do not care about the boring stone foundation. They just want a stable platform to run their code and cast their spells.
And finally, we have SaaS, Software as a Service.
This is the fully staffed, all-inclusive luxury hotel. You do not manage the building, you do not manage the OS, and you certainly do not manage the application code. You just check in at the front desk. You securely log in and you use it. Think Gmail, Salesforce, or Dropbox. The cloud provider handles literally everything except your specific user access and the data you upload.
So in that scenario, the Lord just stays at the inn, the room is perfectly clean, the food is served hot, he just lives there.
Precisely. But this introduces the absolute most critical concept in all of cloud security, and arguably the one most misunderstood by executives, the shared responsibility model.
The endless dispute between the Lord and the landowner.
It should not be a dispute. It is a legally binding contract. In the cloud, the provider is strictly responsible for the security of the cloud. The physical data centers, the biometric locks on the server room doors, the host operating systems. But the customer is always responsible for security in the cloud.
So if I just leave my admin password written on a sticky note, or I make my password 123 and someone totally hacks my Salesforce account.
That is on you, 100%. The provider heavily secured the front door with a military-grade steel lock, but you intentionally left your copy of the key under the welcome mat. You are always, always responsible for your own data, your endpoint devices, and your user identities, regardless of which cloud model you choose.
That is a genuinely scary thought for some companies. Just because your data is in the cloud absolutely does not mean it is inherently safe from your own mistakes.
It is only exactly as safe as you configure it to be.
Okay, moving on from the sky. We've covered the ground, we've walked the walls, and we've looked at the clouds. But there is one more vital way into the castle, a much sneakier way.
Yes. Part 4, the hidden tunnels. We are finally talking about ports.
Ports. Now, normally to me, a port is where a ship docks to unload cargo.
In networking, it is a remarkably similar concept. A server has an IP address, which we established is the main building address. But inside that massive building, there are over 65,000 distinct doors, and each door leads to a very specific internal service. These are called logical ports.
So if I am a single server and I am hosting a public website, but I'm also secretly transferring large files in the background, how does the incoming internet traffic know which door to walk through?
The port number. It acts exactly like a phone extension number. The request says, connect to IP 192.168.1225 and send this to extension 80. The server looks at that and knows, port 80, you want to talk to the web server service. Or it says extension 25, you're holding an envelope, you want the mailroom.
We definitely need to know some of these specific numbers for this material, don't we?
Absolutely. These are strictly non-negotiable facts. You must memorize them. Let's run through the common tunnels you will be tested on.
Okay, let's do it. Port 80, HTTP.
The open market tunnel. This is totally unencrypted web traffic. Anything sent through this specific tunnel is plainly visible to absolutely anyone listening on the wire. It is highly risky. Think of it like sending a postcard through the mail. Anyone who touches it along the way can flip it over and read your message.
So to fix that, we upgrade to port 443, HTTPS.
The guarded armored tunnel. This is secure HTTP. It strictly uses SSL or TLS encryption. It put that postcard inside a locked steel envelope. If you are doing online banking or sending passwords or just valuing your privacy, you absolutely must use port 443.
What about port 22, SSH?
Secure Shell. This is the Commander's secret passage. It is heavily used for secure remote administration of servers. If I'm sitting at home and I desperately need to fix a broken server in the data center, I use an SSH tunnel. It is fully encrypted and safe from prying eyes.
Now, I remember you telling me a terrifying horror story about the old way we used to do that. Telnet, port 23.
Oh, Telnet, the absolute nightmare of early networking. Telnet is the archaic, unencrypted predecessor of SSH. I once audited a municipal water treatment facility, literally critical civic infrastructure. They were casually using Telnet over the internet to remotely manage the massive chemical pumps. I fired up a basic packet sniffer, which is just a tool that passively listens to the wire, and within 10 seconds I watched the primary admin password just float right by in totally plain text.
Let me guess, was it admin123?
It was something painfully close to that. If I were a malicious nation-state actor, I could have easily logged in, overpressurized the civic water pipes, and caused a massive physical disaster. And all that was possible simply because they used the wrong port. Never, ever use Telnet. Always use SSH.
Point well taken. Shutter. What about port 21?
FTP, the File Transfer Protocol. It's the castle's heavy cargo chute. Historically, it was used for moving large batches of files, but much like Telnet, it's completely unencrypted by default. Your sensitive files can easily be stolen while in transit. In the modern era, you should use SFTP instead.
And finally, port 53.
DNS, the domain name system, the grand directory of the realm. It translates human-friendly names like Google.com into the actual IP addresses routers need. Without port 53 functioning properly, you would have to memorize a string of random numbers just to surf the web.
Okay, so we have all these various tunnels, but the underlying problem is the wildlings are out there, and they're constantly knocking on our walls to find them.
We call that port scanning. This is a primary reconnaissance technique. Attackers use automated software tools like Nmap to aggressively scan a target IP address, just looking for open ports. They're literally walking around the castle, tapping their hammer on every single brick, listening for a hollow sound. Is port 80 open? Yes. Is port 22 responding? Yes.
And once they find an open, unprotected port,
They immediately try to exploit whatever specific service is running behind that door. They try to pick the lock. That is exactly why the concept of hardening is so unbelievably critical.
he's sealing up the tunnels.
Precisely. If you are not actively using a service, turn the service off. Close the port at the firewall. If a server is designed to just be a basic web server, it absolutely should not have port 21 for FTP left wide open. Why on earth would you have a massive cargo chute open if you aren't currently moving cargo? It is just another unnecessary way for a rat to sneak into the keep.
Brick it up. If you aren't actively using the sewer grate, seal it shut with concrete.
A slightly crude but perfectly accurate summary of system hardening. You must continuously reduce your attack surface.
Okay, strategist. We have built the castle, we have manned the high walls, we have looked deep into the clouds, and we have permanently sealed the hidden tunnels. I think it is finally time to test the listener's mettle to see what's stuck.
The battle plan. Let us see what knowledge has been retained from all of this.
I'm going to do a rapid-fire recap. I will throw a core term at you, and you just give me the quick-hit definition for the exam. Ready?
I was born ready for this.
LAN?
Local area network,
Oh.
physically owned by you, very high speed. It is the castle.
What?
Wide area network,
Oh.
owned and operated by the ISP, connects multiple LANs together. The King's Road
Switch.
connects devices physically within LAN, uses MMigresses and ARP, intelligent local delivery within the castle walls,
Router.
connects entirely different networks, uses IP addresses and routing tables. The border control checkpoint
Firewall.
strictly controls traffic based on configured rules.
Mm.
Modern ones statefully track connections. The gatekeeper,
Defense in depth.
overlapping layered security, using multiple different controls to exponentially increase the work factor for the attacker.
Zero trust.
Never trust, always verify. Constantly authenticate every single request, regardless of if they are inside or out.
Excellent. Now, instead of just simple definition questions, let's actually enter the war room. I am going to give you a scenario, a real-world crisis,
Yeah.
and I want you to tell the listeners exactly how to handle it based on Domain 4 principles.
Set the stage for me.
Scenario 1. You are the security lord. Suddenly, the red alarms go off. An IDS alert pops up and says massive traffic is freely flowing from your highly secure database server directly to an unknown IP address in a foreign country. It is all happening over port 21. What exactly is happening and what specific defense failed?
This is a massive data exfiltration actively in progress.
Yeah.
Port 21 is FTP file transfer. Someone is currently stealing your entire database. What failed? Well, first, egress filtering failed. Your perimeter firewall absolutely should have blocked the internal database server from ever initiating an outbound connection to the general internet. Databases should never surf the web. Second, why on earth is Port 21 open on a secure database to begin with? That is a massive system hardening failure.
Scenario 2. A regular user over in the accounting department blindly clicks a phishing link in an email. Suddenly, sensitive files over on the entirely separate engineering file server start getting heavily encrypted. It's ransomware. How did it spread so fast, and what architectural choice could have stopped it?
It spread effortlessly because you built a completely flat network. The compromised accounting user's machine could talk directly to the engineering server with no friction. You desperately needed segmentation. Specifically, you needed VLANs. If you had properly placed an internal firewall or a strict ACL between the accounting subnet and the engineering subnet, the ransomware malware would have been totally trapped inside the accounting VLAN. The engineering files would still be perfectly safe.
Scenario 3. You want to securely let your remote workers access the internal, highly sensitive inventory system from their home offices, but you definitely do not want to expose that entire system to the public internet. You don't want to just stick it out in the DMZ. What do?
You deploy a VPN, a virtual private network. This technology creates a heavily encrypted, secure tunnel directly through the chaotic public internet, the WAN, and routes them securely into your internal network. It is basically like a magical, invisible, armored subway line that connects the remote worker's laptop straight to the inner keep, completely protected by encryption.
Scenario 4. A junior developer spins up a brand new test server in the public cloud, let's say AWS. They install the OS, but they completely forget to patch a known critical vulnerability. 2 days later, the server gets totally hacked. The developer immediately blames the cloud provider for poor security. Who is actually right?
The junior developer is completely wrong. This scenario describes IS, infrastructure as a service. Under the strict shared responsibility model, the cloud customer is 100% responsible for the guest OS and all the patching that goes with it. The provider only ensures the underlying hardware hypervisor is running. It is undeniably the developer's fault for not patching.
Last one, Scenario 5. You are configuring a new public-facing web server for a major bank. You configure the firewall to open port 80 and port 443. Is this secure?
Absolutely not yet. You should completely close port 80 or at the very least configure it to immediately force a redirect to port 443. You should never ever allow sensitive banking transactions to occur over port 80, which is unencrypted HTTP. You must force all traffic through the encrypted HTTPS tunnel on 443.
Brilliant. You truly know this material inside and out.
I certainly try my best to keep the realm safe.
Before we finally close the heavy wooden gates on this session, what is your absolute final battle wisdom for someone staring down this exam?
4 critical things to take with you into the testing room. Number 1, deeply understand the traffic flow. Traffic goes from the LAN to the switch to the router, through the firewall, and out to the WAN. Number 2, know your OSI layers. Switches operate at layer 2 using MOC addresses. Routers operate at layer 3 using IP addresses. Number 3, memorize those specific ports. 21, 22, 53, 80, 443. You absolutely will see them on the test. And number 4, perhaps the most important, true security is simply about the management of risk. It is not about building a wall so impossibly high that no one can ever climb it. It is about building a wall just high enough that it's not worth the effort to climb, while still making sure the gates can open for actual business.
That is incredibly wise.
And just remember that technology always serves the business policy. We build the physical walls exactly where the king commands us to, based entirely on the monetary value of what we are actively protecting.
The network is a realm, and you are now fully armed with the knowledge required to defend it. We have walked the high ramparts, we have rigorously inspected the main gates, and we have looked deep into the cloud.
But just passively listening to us is only the very first step. You actually must study the map. Go back to the source material, reread these definitions, and practice the scenario questions.
And here's a final, somewhat provocative thought to keep you up at night, staring at the blinking green lights of your home router. If the network really is a kingdom, and the concept of zero trust demands that we inherently trust absolutely no one, then who watches the watchers?
A genuinely chilling thought to end on.
We deploy these incredibly complex, highly privileged tools, Next-gen firewalls, deep packet IPS, massive seams to secure the entire network. But those tools are just software too. They are written by humans, they have massive code bases, they have their own vulnerabilities. Are the very shields we use to protect ourselves silently becoming the biggest, most attractive targets for the attackers?
That is the ultimate paradox of cybersecurity. Excessive complexity is the natural enemy of security, and yet we require immense complexity to adequately defend ourselves against modern threats.
Something serious to mull over while you study. Would you like to enter a battle simulation quiz next?
I strongly believe our listeners are finally ready for it.
Then let's go. Until next time, defend the realm.